Join me every month for the inspiration to find your finish line. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Find Your Finish Line. The podcast is not only about you being able to find your finish line at a race or an event, but in life. I'll talk to people that have overcome quite a few things in their life to get to their finish line. Their journeys and their stories are inspiring, and hopefully they'll inspire you to be able to find your next finish line. Athletes and coaches, if you're looking for a great training program that gives you better results, faster results, and less time, fewer injuries, check out Training. Training, especially for you coaches, investigate into that, helping you help your athletes get to that finish line. Go to tridot.com and check it all out. My guest today, I'm very excited to have her on because I was on one of her first podcasts, I think in 2016 or 17. She's a 4-time Ironman, co-founder of YOGITRIATHLETE, a holistic performance coaching company, creator and author of Awake Athlete, When Mastery is Only the Only Option. YOGITRIATHLETE, Jess Gumkowski, how are you? And welcome to Find Your Finish Line.
Doing so well today, Mike. As you know, as a fellow San Diegan, we're having just the most spectacular day. So I just got back from some time out in the sun, did a quick little diaphragmatic breath meditation, and then hopped on here with you. So things are good.
Well, I always ask all my guests the first question, the same one, because sometimes I like to catch them and it embarrasses them or they try to make excuses. My first question is always, what kind of workout did you get in today? So tell us again.
Yeah, well, I left out that I did a bike.
Oh,
So I did a nice VO2 max bike on the trainer, and it was interesting because I'm on the trainer and I'm looking outside at this gorgeous blue sky, and we know that there's a little bit of rain coming to Southern California. So I thought I got to get off this bike and get out in the sun. So I just went out and did like a 20-minute walk with the dog, just a nice brisk walk. And so, yeah, about an hour and a half total between the bike and the walk. And then I did about 5 minutes of yoga this morning because that's what I could fit in. But it's a great way for me to roll out the mat before the sun gets up and get my body mobile and get my muscles fired up and get me right where I am, which is, just this present moment. And I try and carry that throughout my day. Although, like everyone, the brain likes to wander into the future or think about the past. And I just keep bringing myself back to right here.
good for you. Good for you. A great start to the day. Ever since I was on your podcast, and you could probably figure out, was it 2016? I think it was the first year you guys were doing it.
I think it might have been, but I will say you were our 100th guest.
Oh, okay. Okay.
We couldn't believe we had 100 episodes, and we were like, we're in San Diego, and we know Mike Riley's here, and we're gonna seek him out. And you were so gracious, and you came to our little studio apartment here in Carlsbad, and we recorded the podcast. And then we did another one just I want to say just last year.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Well, Jess, for so many out there, it's always about miles. It's about training. It's about recovering and then doing it over again. But your philosophy with training and mental training is different than most. Why don't you explain to us why you believe that, that mental training is just as important as the physical training to try to become that overall good athlete?
Yeah, the story that comes up for me is really my own story. I say that when I started triathlon in 2005, so I'm looking on 2 decades in the
Wow,
sport.
good for you.
Yeah, and 3 decades on the yoga mat. I say that when I first started, I used to swim with fists because those were the mass start days, and you really had to defend yourself on those swims. But also there was a part of me that was like off gassing some intense energy that I really didn't know what to do with, and so we can just call that energy anger. And I found that, the finish line felt so good, and the accomplishment of 3 sports was beyond anything I had experienced before. But there was this part of me that was also like, I was running from myself, I was running to myself, I was just noticing. It brought me self-awareness. What happened when I dropped my nutrition, what happened when I got a flat, what happened when somebody swam over me. And I was able to watch those reactions. And it was 2005, then it was about 2010 that I started my meditation practice and mindful practice, and really getting into that space between stimulus and response. And what I realized that is that I found myself in a new way. I found myself, I saw all the really beautiful parts, patience and calm. And that translated not just to my performance, how I transitioned, how I dealt with obstacles on race day or in training, paces that weren't where I wanted them to be. It translated to my marriage. It translated to my clients. At the time, I was a massage therapist, my family. And I say, like, meditation is, and I'm saying specifically meditation, but there's a lot more to mindset than just meditation.
Hmm.
Meditation being really that core practice that everything else grows from. It's like filling an ice cube tray. You start to put that water in one of the little spots, and then eventually it overflows. And so what I discovered through it was wellness, this level of wellness, that no matter if I was training 20, 25 hours a week, I was still experiencing this wellness in this space in between stimulus and response, and space in between all of the things that need to get done as an age grouper in a day that's training for a long distance race. And so it just became my life. And then people noticed, and they kept at, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you eating? What are you doing? And nobody really, especially at that time, nobody wanted to hear about meditation. But now it's becoming, you know, much more mainstream, which is beautiful. And science, it has so much wonderful research behind it for athletes, especially. And so, yeah, it's this way of, um, training and racing and living that not just benefits the athlete, but their families and their future. It really brings longevity to sport and living well.
Jess, let's take it even a step further. All triathletes, we all know out there, especially on race day, it's crazy. I mean, getting in the water, the whole deal, going through transition, like you say, somebody swimming over you. You could get a flat tire. The weather could not be great. You run and it's just not where it's at. How can the correlation and how can you practice it when you're in such a high energy situation to where you're trying to reset your mindset to, like, say to yourself, take it easy. This is a good thing. These things are going to come along. Did you find it hard for a while to transition to that mindfulness, especially on a race day?
Yeah, well, it's a build, right? It's just like when you sign up for a triathlon, you have to start at the beginning, especially if you've never done one before. And so you can't skip any rungs on the ladder. So at first it's messy, and you fall back into old habits. But and that's why meditation, it needs to be the base, because every morning that we get still and we stop the momentum of doing, 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 which we're so addicted to. I was so addicted to it. I wanted nothing to do with meditation, nothing. I never, ever thought my whole life that I would meditate, let alone be on your podcast talking about it as, the single most important thing any athlete or human can do each day. And it doesn't matter if it's 5 minutes or an hour, it's that consistency, just like our physical training. So at first it's messy, you've got those neural pathways of how you've behaved
Hmm.
and responded in the past. And these things start really early when we're young. And so, but every day you sit and you get quiet. And I'm not talking about quieting the mind, because the mind is a thought producing machine. So that's where the messiness comes in. Like, we're so used to just being in thought that we start this practice to observe thoughts. It's really, It's a
That's
really difficult thing. It's not easy, but to in
observe.
go ahead.
Let me stop you. Yeah, the mind is messy. We all know that. So in meditation, you don't try to push out the thoughts that are in your head at that present time. You try to what with them?
Yeah, that's such a great question, right? So, let's say this is video podcast, right?
Right.
This is good. Okay, good. So I've got like my left hand. Let's say the left hand is the thoughts, okay, and the right hand is our awareness.
Hmm.
And so most of us, and me too, for a very long time, and throughout the day, many times a day, I found myself here. Our thoughts and our awareness are just velcroed together. There's no space. So thoughts are just coming in, coming in, coming in. And so what we do in meditation is, and specifically how I teach it and how I've learned, is that we train our awareness to be on something other than the thoughts. So, on your breath, breathing in for 3, breathing out for 6, a mantra. Those are really the primary tools that I use in meditation each day. Start with breath work to help concentrate the mind, get the parasympathetic nervous system activated, and then after I feel calm enough, and that doesn't mean that thoughts stop. They don't stop. But what is happening is that I'm pulling my awareness back to the breath, and then it's in the thought, and then I pull it back to the breath, and it's in the thought, and I pull it back to the breath. To try and stop your thoughts is an impossibility because your mind is a thought producing machine. So if you have a busy mind, if your mind is producing thoughts, that's wonderful. You have a healthy mind. It's doing what it's supposed to do. But we have another piece of us, which is awareness. And that awareness is what we want to train to be on something other than the thoughts. And this, of course, just explodes into so many different things, namely like flow, which is activity and awareness merged together. You know, awareness and thoughts merged together can be a circus. So, unless we're training our minds to be on something other than the thoughts, we're going to be really absorbed in that thought life. So, the first rule of meditation is you don't have to stop your thoughts. So, if that's been your obstacle to sitting still, you can just let that go. It's okay. It's okay. The mind is doing what it's supposed to do.
Well, Jess, in my mind, what you're talking about, because it's what I practice, is yoga. That's where the breathing comes in, and it seems to not push away the thoughts, but it relaxes you a little more. So, yoga is meditation, correct?
Yeah, so meditation, so yoga is the science of the mind, which is really the science that I'm teaching from. And our modern scientists are in their research are finding the very same things that the yogis were teaching us thousands of years ago. So yoga is an 8-limbed science of the mind. And the physical practice that we're so aware of and is so common in our Western world is one of those limbs. Another limb is meditation. And then
Mm.
the most important limb to meditation is the one that precedes it, which is concentration. And that is concentrating your mind on something other than those thoughts. So breath, mantra, you can use the body, right? The body's always happening right now. It will anchor you into the present moment. And that's what yoga is teaching us on the mat. It's teaching us to witness, like I'm in warrior 2 and my shoulders are burning. Okay, notice, what is the mind saying about that? It's saying, get out, get out. How long are we going to be here? I got to get out of this. But that doesn't mean that those thoughts are true or that you have to respond to those impulses. And that's where we really begin to gain control, not only of our minds, but of our life.
I was just thinking, Jess, of the big picture. It has to be because I know a lot of triathletes, obviously, and so do you, and we've come across all kinds of personalities. It has to be so much harder to coach this on the mindfulness and the mental strength than coaching somebody to, get in a 100-mile ride today, or it's got to be so much tougher. Isn't it? It's I just can't
Well,
imagine
it's
trying to get through to some people I know.
yeah, and you know what? Those they may not be ready. And so we're not here our one of our basic, philosophies here is we're not here to push anything, you know. Um back in 2016 when Yogi Triathlete began, I mean, I'll tell you, people were running in the opposite direction. Nobody wanted to talk to us. It was like crickets. But we were so passionate about what we were doing and how, and my husband BJ, who is also
Mhm.
my business partner, we knew how much it was not, affecting our training and benefiting our marriage. That, when we went all in with Yogi Triathlete, we knew that what we had discovered for a recipe for our life was too good, and that we are all seeking to feel better. Now, times have changed and people are more open to it, which is so wonderful because that helps me pay the rent and get groceries. But when people come to Yogi Triathlete, they're coming now because of what we offer. They're coming because they're done feeling the post race blues. They're done burying themselves in doing, and then getting sick and then having to pull away from training. They're looking for a more well-rounded program. And we really go after the mind. And so what I'm getting at, and to answer your question, is for some of the athletes on Team Yogi Triathlete, it's waking up and taking one conscious breath. Just take a deep breath in, feel your diaphragm drop, take a deep breath out, feel that diaphragm come up, and just get all the old air out of your lungs. And then walk into your day. And it's so incredible how one breath will set a tone for their morning. And then what happens is then they're like, well, I want to do 5 breaths. We're like, okay, do 5 breaths. And they're like, well, I want to do it for 10 minutes. Okay, we'll do it for 10 minutes. I want to do it for an hour. We're like, no, not for an hour. Just go back to 10 minutes. Like, get really good at 10 minutes. So it is, people on the team, sometimes they need to step away from it. They're like, I need to step away from it. And we say, okay, like, you're not kicked off the team. We're here to meet you where you're at. So some folks come to Team Yogi Triathlete and they're not meditating and they're not doing yoga, but they love the energy. And there's something about it that is keeping them on the team and that is lending to their wellness and their performance. And so if that's what people are taking away, that's wonderful. We're not here to push an agenda. We're here, BJ and I are here to live the demonstration. And then what happens inevitably over time is that people realize the value in it and they
Mhm.
see the changes, and not because the meditation is perfect. The meditation's a mess. But what happens is a few months down the line, their spouse or their kids or, one of their teammates says, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? You look better. You're more calm. Like, I remember you used to be panicked. What are you doing? And that's the beauty, is that it's just so powerful. It's that ice cube tray and it starts to overflow.
That's I understand that completely. You know, it's important to do this all the time. I understand that, but knowing the post-race blues that so many athletes have, they
Yeah.
go through 6, 8, 12 months of training. They get the race day. They have a great day, okay day, maybe not a great day. But afterwards, no matter who they are, professional to age grouper, there's that letdown. There's that, oh my
Hmm.
gosh, what do I do now? They're not going to go out and do an 80-mile bike ride. They know physically they shouldn't do that. So do you believe that probably the best part of the meditation and yoga and mindfulness is probably right after an event? It's the way to recover?
Oh my gosh. It is the single most potent recovery tool because you're working with the breath. You're getting that parasympathetic nervous system into dominance, and the body is healing. And it's also creating this calmness effect where you're able to move through those waves of feeling the blues with more awareness, and not so much getting caught up in all the thoughts about what you're feeling, because what you're feeling is real and true and needs to be felt and needs to be acknowledged. But the thoughts about what you're feeling are not always true. And so to have that space to be able to see those thoughts and not give them fuel, because that's what perpetuates thoughts, is our attention. It's like fuel. So when we can engage our minds and our awareness and just what we're feeling, oh, I'm feeling really heavy today, and not the thoughts about what we're feeling, we actually move through it quicker. And then the muscles are recovering,
Mhm.
and the body is recovering quicker. So recovery time, yeah, it's incredible. That's a great time to be practicing for sure.
You had a hard time making a commitment to meditation, as you said. What do you think the single most scared reason is why people don't want to try it just a little bit? Why are they do they feel they're going to think about something that they don't want to think about? What do you think it is?
Oh, it's such a good question. I think there's so many things. I can speak to myself. It was this fear of really seeing what was brewing under the surface.
Mhm.
There's so many things throughout our life, even just watching the news or being in a restaurant that has is broadcasting something on the news, like all of that is leaving an impression on us. And if we don't take time to really feel that or process, what we're experiencing in our lives, it will kind of start to simmer under the surface. And so, number one, the real surface reason for me was like, well, what am I going to do? Sit still? Like, that's a waste of time. It's not productive. So that's a big one. And it's okay if somebody's going, oh my God, yeah, that's my reason. Like, I get that reason. But once I did sit, it was like, whoa, what is going on under here? Like, it was like a tornado. Um, and so it's key to get like your hook. What's your hook with meditation? What's going to get you to sit? And it could be just educating yourself on the benefits, physically, your brain health, getting the intellect on board with it will really help. But I think it really, in the society of, doing, I really believe it's like, is this going to be worth it? Is this worth my time? My life is already so busy, and I have so many commitments. Like,
Mhm.
I can't, because the results aren't, they're not going to show up on your Garmin. I mean, they will in your heart rate if you want to track your heart rate, but they're not going to show up. And so there's some faith and there's some belief that need to precede the practice to
That's
really
the
get
old
those benefits.
that's the old adage of I need me time. You could have,
Yeah.
3 kids, you got this job, you got the whole deal, I've talked to so many people where if I don't go sit down for 10 minutes on my own, I'm not gonna make it through the day, and because they need that time by themselves. Jess, let's talk
Hmm.
about Awake Athlete. The thing that interests me, I've read not all the book, part of it, is you talk about mastery. I'm just gonna Mastery is a powerful word. To me, it almost means perfect. I've got it. I've mastered that skill or that asset or whatever it may be. Why do you say that mastery is your only option? Because to me, it seems, wow, if that's my only option, how am I going to get to mastery? Can you explain that?
Yeah, the subtitle of the book is "When Mastery Is Your Only Option." So it's really speaking to that strong will and drive of the athlete who wants to be their best on race day, of course. But I think
Mhm.
that we're seeing more and more with age groupers and the demands of life that they want to be their best everywhere. They want to be their best partner, parent, employee, and of course, their best athlete. So it's really playing upon the drive and the will of the athlete to say, oh, you mean to tell me that if I just sit still for 10 minutes, I'm going to have physiological benefits? I'm going to be paving new neural pathways in my brain. And then eventually, if I stay on this path, I'm going to be the master of my mind as opposed to the mind being the master of me. Yes. And that's the athlete that I am. That's who I am. Like, for me, mastery is the only option. I've got this one gorgeous, chaotic, traumatic, beautiful life. And so I want to use every opportunity in this life to further my way to really fulfill my potential. And I think individually, to fulfill your potential really is mastering your life. And perfection comes with so much baggage, right? Like pressure.
Mm.
But the truth is, Mike, we are perfect. And it's the things that meditation and mindfulness is not about adding anything. It's about letting go and allowing those layers that don't align with our truth of, being loving, compassionate beings, which really to me is masterful perfection. It's about just allowing those things to fall away. And that happens over time when those things are ready.
So hold
I hope
on,
that
I'm gonna.
answers your
It,
question.
it does, but I'm gonna go in the other room and go tell my wife I'm perfect now and see how that goes over. So just kidding aside, hey BJ, she's perfect. So you know what I just thought of? If
Wow.
someone starts in the sport at 35 years old, whatever how age they start in triathlon, and they go out and get a coach and they learn to swim and bike, those things are all kind of black and white. But then you have to start working on the mind. And you, as a mindset coach, you, as someone who starts doing that, you're not dealing with that triathlete that started working out 3 years ago in triathlon. You're dealing with that person from day one of their life. That's the correlation to me seems like, wow, we've got a lot of baggage when it comes to that. Triathlon, we don't have as much baggage. You learned it, you picked it up, you started doing it. But with the mindset of it all, you're dealing with everybody and since the first day of their lives.
Yeah. Sometimes, Mike, I laugh. I was just laughing the other day with my husband because I was like, it would be so nice, like we always think the grass is always greener, right? But I just had this kind of funny moment where I was like, could you imagine like if I was doing these sessions with athletes and we were just talking about goals and paces, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I am talking about trauma. I am talking about like abuse. I am talking about depression. And it's so, like I said, like this traumatic, chaotic, beautiful, gorgeous life, it comes with all of it. And for whatever reason, that is a comfort zone for me. And just being able to listen and meet people where they're at and assist them with tools. I can't save them, I can't change them, but I can give them really tried and true tools that will help them move through those moments. Because, like I said, all of that needs to be acknowledged and felt. And for whatever reason, and I do feel really blessed for this. I'm working with a lot, like a lot of kind of heavy things that don't feel so heavy to me because I see such a commonality between. I've seen this I've worked with professional athletes. I've worked with people going to the Olympics. I've worked with people doing their first sprint triathlon. And the thing is that there's so much commonality in our humanity that we're navigating these things. We're anxious. Sometimes we wake up in the middle of the night. We hope that we're good enough. And so, yeah, it's a rich bag of topics that I'm working with, but I feel incredibly blessed and honored to really hold that space for people, for
I
sure.
think
Yeah.
I think the other hard part would be, obviously we all want things to happen overnight. Okay, I'm
Mm.
doing my 20 push-ups a day, I'm gonna be stronger. That, but you're working with shift, and you've talked about that. The shift doesn't happen overnight, but you can see that happening in someone in very small doses, can't you?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And it's so interesting how the mind will want to kind of dumb it down. Somebody will come to me and say, how's your week been? I'll say, how's your week been? Like, what's going on? What are you working with? And they'll be like, oh, well, tell me a victory. I always like to talk about victories. Tell me about a victory this week. Well, it's not really that big of it. I mean, it's not really a big deal, but like, I was in the grocery store line and this person in front of me was taking all this time. And like, normally I would have done this, and this, but instead I breathed in for 3 and I exhaled for 6 and I felt calm and I actually felt compassionate. And I'm like, hold the phone. Like, this is a transformative moment. This is a massive victory. But it's interesting how the mind or our conditioning will say like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. But that to me is a massive shift because an old reaction was not fed. And so it can be the grocery store line. It could be when, you're getting to that finish line and then all of a sudden the person who's going to take your podium spot is right behind you, right? It's like
Yeah.
instead of getting concerned about that, it's like you're just fully in the moment moving forward in a new way. And so, yeah, I see victories everywhere. And I would say probably the hardest part of my job is helping people understand how massive those are because they're so big.
So in their mind, dumbing it down, it seems so small to them, but you see it as so big. Does that have to have something to do with, because you've said ego is not your enemy? And I think people, they don't want to have a big ego. They don't want people to think they're grandiose and all this good stuff. So explain how you believe ego is not your enemy.
Well, that's so funny because that's the ego that's saying, like,
Yeah, like,
I don't want people to
right.
think I'm grandiose. Like, that's the ego right there. It comes in the front door, comes in the back door, goes through the bulkhead. It's got the extra key, comes through the attic. It comes through all these different ways. So it's not your enemy. It's not your enemy because it makes you who you are. Your ego is your individuality. It makes me Jess, it makes you Mike, it makes you the host and me the guest. Otherwise, this isn't going to work. We're just going to stare at each other and nobody's going to take the lead, right? So we need these roles. We need this individuality in our life. And the other thing that the ego does is it carries our personal will. It
Mm,
carries our will. The same will that gets you to cross the finish line is the same will that got me out of bed this morning when the alarm went off at 4:30. It's the same will that got me to, shut my computer down and open it back up and read the email that you sent me so I could, connect in and be a good guest. So the ego carries all of these really, really important things, but we need to tame it. We need to make sure that it knows that it's not the boss. So it can
mm,
be your enemy if it's left to its own devices. Because, like I said, it's the part you're gonna cross the finish line and you're gonna say, oh my God, that was amazing. And then 2 days later, it's gonna be beating you up,
yeah.
because you didn't make your time. So it's important to understand the calling cards of the ego. And we see this a lot and I've experienced this all the time. You walk into transition, it's like, oh, everybody's got a better bike than me. Like, oh, that person's so fit, and I look fat in my tri suit. And that's all the ego. So if you think about the ego as the little self, it's just like our little self. And then we have this higher mind, we have this bigger perspective part of us. That's the part that you want running your life. The one that's like, it's okay that we don't know all the answers yet. Just keep going, follow your heart. And the ego is the one that's saying, like, oh, you got to stay safe, you got to stay small, like, you don't need to change, like, mediocrity is okay, things are good enough. But I believe we came here to evolve and grow. And, this is one of the reasons why I've been a triathlete now for almost 2 decades, is because, boy, that has been such a catalyst for growth and evolution in my own life. And then add in, self awareness and meditation and mindfulness. It's just, wow, there's no way off the path at this point. It's just, there's no way else to live. And we find that with our athletes as well. They're like, I can't imagine like not training in this way anymore, because there's little mindfulness all weaved into their workouts and things like that. So the ego is so important because it makes you your special, unique self. There's nobody in this world like you, Mike. We need you to be more of who you are. But we also want to know it's calling cards, and I talk about it a lot in the book. There's a whole chapter on that little bugger, and so that we can tame it and we can be the master of it. We can be the boss of it.
It's funny you mentioned the transition, but and looking at other people. I had a friend do Ironman, and he was in transition in the morning. He came over to me at the fence before they were getting in the water, and he goes, "Who are these people?" I go, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Look, who the hell are these people?" That's what he said. "Who the hell are these people?" He goes, "That's not me." I go, "Yeah, it is. You've been training. You're okay. You look fit." He was comparing himself to everybody else in there, and he could have walked by the pro rack for all I know. But that's what we do to ourselves. We can't do that to ourselves.
Yeah, and we do, and so you just gotta watch it and know where it's coming from and then we get to choose. We've got this incredible free will that comes from the ego. We get to choose if we're gonna give it our fuel and our attention, or if we're gonna or if we're not, if we're gonna ignore those kinds of things that make us feel small and not good enough.
We're speaking with yogi triathlete Jess. Jess, uh, tell me about your retreats. They look so much fun. I mean, you've got retreats in Ojai, you've got one in Sicily, you've got, I mean, my goodness, uh, are the retreats as much for you as they are your your clients?
If I had to say the place where I feel like I shine the most, it's leading a retreat. I'm just a leader by nature. That's who I am. I come from a family of leaders, and
I like that.
yeah, oh yeah, I come from an incredible family, and this mindfulness stuff didn't start 10 years ago. This started when I
Mm.
was a little kid with my mom. She's my mindfulness guru. But yeah, the retreat. So I always knew I was going to like take big trips in my life. I've known that my whole life. I didn't know how it was going to happen. But I was raised by a mother and a father who always said, follow your heart, follow your heart. You can be whatever you want to be. You can marry whoever you want to be. Love is love. We don't care. Like, follow your heart. You're a unique person. You're here to do something, or that only you can do in your way. And so I just kept following my heart. And man, I messed up and I was so reckless for a time in my life. Um, and then I became a yoga teacher. And as soon as I became a yoga teacher, I knew I was going to lead retreats. But again, I didn't have a yoga following. I didn't know how this was all going to happen. And then, of course, I came into triathlon and I was a massage therapist and then teaching yoga and starting to grow a following. And it was back in 2019, a friend of mine who used to be like my sign in girl at my yoga studio that I taught at in Rhode Island said, hey, I'm thinking about doing some retreats. Would you? And she asked another woman, a dear friend of mine, would you girls like to lead it with me? And I was like, oh my gosh, here it is, the first opportunity. So of course I have to say yes. And so the first retreat that we were planning was in 2020 in May
Mm.
in
Oh,
Costa
wow.
Rica. So
Yeah.
as you can imagine, we got a PhD in trying to lead your first retreat during a global pandemic. And then we went back the following year to Costa Rica, and we've now done that 3 times. We've led a retreat in Maui. So the retreats that I lead with these other two women are very, very meditation, yoga, lots of deep silence, meditations multiple times a day, silent eating. Like, it's really a deep immersion into yoga and this
Wow.
science of the mind. And then about less than a year ago, and maybe it was about a year ago, I saw a friend of mine here in California was leading a yoga adventure. And I was like, hold on a second. Like, I feel like yoga adventures were created for me. I mean, that just sums up who I am. I love the silence. I love long meditations. I love that, but I love to take risks. I love to do big adventures. And that's when I got connected in with a partner company called the Travel Yogi, who
Mm.
they are adventure travel experts. So they put together these gorgeous, beautiful, like curated itineraries, and they're always big cultural immersion. So it's adventure travel grounded in a yoga practice, and it's
Mm.
just so perfect for me. And so, yeah, I mean, careful for what you ask for when you keep saying yes. So I'm leading a retreat with a yoga adventure in Patagonia, Chile in March. I'm leading a yoga adventure
I
in the
saw that.
Galapagos Islands in Ecuador in June. And just about 10 days ago, they asked me to take over their Sicily yoga adventure at the end of September. So I haven't even done one with them yet. And now I got 3 on the books. So I'm just going to keep going.
I tell you, that Sicily one is enticing. The problem with me is,
Mm.
gosh, it'd be tough not to have a couple glasses of red wine. I mean, you're
No,
going,
well, that's the thing about the yoga adventures. Well, first of all, on any yoga retreat, you can indulge in whatever you want. But in Sicily, we are going to be sipping volcanic wine. We're going to be staying on a vineyard, so there will be wine tastings and incredible food. And so that adventure is going to be woof otherworldly, just amazing.
well, I may have to talk to my wife about that. That'd be one heck of a way to spend a week. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and then we ground on the mat so we can you know how it is.
Yeah,
You're no stranger to the yoga mat where you can just slow down and absorb everything that, you've experienced in this beautiful land. So,
exactly.
yeah,
Jess,
go to Sicily.
is it tough or more difficult to, have a partner, you BJ, a partner in the business and share triathlon? Because in one respect, you're probably together a lot. Is it tough to be in business with a partner? Your partner?
It's so challenging and so rewarding and
Oh,
so
wait,
who
you said, I'm gonna tell BJ, you said challenging first.
so challenging, so rewarding, and it's just who we are. We met at work. We've been
Oh,
together
okay.
now for over 26 years.
Good for
We
you.
met. He was the marketing guy. I was the corporate sales manager, and there you go. And
Mm,
then, we've been entrepreneurs. We had a web design business together for
mm.
many years, and yeah, it's really challenging. But I'll tell you, Mike, a little mindfulness goes a long way in helping us have very candid, vulnerable, awkward conversations. I tell people who know BJ and I or see us, online or whatever, like we've heard rumblings of like, is it true? Like, are the smiles real? Like, come on, what goes on behind closed doors? And the thing is that BJ and I came together in this life for many incredible, beautiful experiences. And we have a really, really solid relationship. We also came together to overcome some pretty yucky cycles and things that married couples get into. And it's just amazing how we apply, what we teach, what we live individually to our marriage. And so, yeah, there's moments of awkwardness. There's moments where I'm like, I got to take a walk.
I was gonna
And
say there's those alone moments besides sometimes you just gotta be by yourself and no
yeah,
matter what.
yeah. And that's what it is. We've always allowed ourselves to each other, I should say, allowed each other space. People will say to me, like, what's the trick? Like, what's the secret? And I'm like, he doesn't hassle me and I don't hassle him. And that is so important to let him be him, in his little organized piles of clutter. And then I get to breathe through what I think about those organized piles of clutter. And it's comical, it's just comical. And so, yeah, it's rewarding, it's challenging, but there's no one else I'd want to walk this earth with. No way. No way. Nothing, nobody else feels right. So,
Good for you.
yeah, it's all the
Soulmate.
things.
Soulmate.
Yeah, it's all the things.
One of my last questions, I've got a couple more, is what advice, Jess, would you give to someone who's just jumping into our sport or any sport uh, for the first time? There's so many different directions that can go. They can hear things from their peers and their friends. But what advice would you give them if they walked up to you and you met them at a grocery store? Hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What would you say to them?
Oh, well, if they said, I'm thinking about doing this, I would say, think no more, do it. It's on your heart for a reason. It's not going to go anywhere. So if there's something about it that scares you, remember that fear and excitement come from the body has the same reaction to both. And so it's just how we determine how we're going to look at it. But if somebody said, I'm thinking about doing this, I would say, absolutely no hesitation, stake your claim, register for the race, and then move into your training. I would also say, I've always invested in a coach. It just so happens my husband is my coach now, but I've always invested in that because I love just the guidance. I love in a busy life. Like, yeah, I
Hmm.
meditate, but I am grinding all day. Like I can go with the best of them. And just to open up my training peaks or whatever it is, and or a plan or try dot, or having that guidance is, for me, it's a non-negotiable. And then I would also say, don't don't lose the play, don't lose the joy, don't lose
Mm.
the fun. We got so serious as adults, and that's something I constantly remind myself of, is to just be in play, more play. So important, to really soak in those moments of joy and laughter. And this community so well. Like, man, you make these connections with people and you may never see them again. And it's those moments that you never
Hmm.
forget. And
Hmm.
that just fills your heart. So don't hesitate to step into the sport. It's on your heart or your mind for a reason, and you should step into it for
I've,
sure.
I've always said play heals. It just
Yes,
heals the soul, heals the body, and when you're smiling, you're healing. So
I
that's
know. So true.
we got to.
It's
By the
so
way, we got
true.
to. Before I thought of it, we got to schedule. We got to go for a ride together. I got to come out your way and ride the
Yeah.
coast, and I can't believe we've never gotten a workout in together.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, let's
Jess,
do it. That would be great.
yeah, we'll plan it. One of my
Okay.
last questions comes. It's called tri-table racing. It comes out of table racing. I've got friends that race the Baja 1000 in their trophy trucks, and it's just an intense deal going 1,000 miles over the train down there. But afterwards, they get together and they sit around a table. They call it table racing. They reminisce about the event, what happened, what went wrong, what went right. So I call this tri-table racing. Reminisce with us about an event that you did, something that happened at the event, a result or non-result, whatever it may be. Just tri-table race with us.
Oh, I love that. Well, the thing that comes to mind is 2008 Ironman Coeur d'Alene. It was my first Ironman. You called me over the finish line. And I remember being in my office in our house in Boulder, Colorado. My hands were shaking, and I was like, my vision was blurry, and I'm trying to register for the race. And I'm like breathing. This is pre-meditation. I am just freaking out. And I get to, do all the training, all of that, and get to the starting line. And it was the mass start. And I grew up in Cape Cod. I grew up in the water, so it never really. That doesn't mean I haven't had a panic attack. I've definitely had
Yeah.
panic attacks in the water, not in a very long time. But that day, you want to talk about play? I remember they were playing Black Eyed Peas, and I was dancing on the shore of that little beach there in Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah.
And and uh and the gun went off, and it was just, I was like, every time I took a breath, if I saw a kayaker, I was just like hooting and hollering and having such a great time. And had a great swim and got on the bike. And that was like the old bike course where it was like just
Mm.
huge hills. And I remember the advice that I got. It was like the worst advice, but it was like, eat as much as you. I had no nutrition plan, and somebody said, eat as much as you possibly can on the bike. Just eat as much as you possibly can. So I was just eating and eating and eating and eating and eating. And at like mile 108, I had like a hot, soggy banana. And I was like, oh, I don't know if that feels so good. And came into transition. And the first 10 miles of that marathon, I thought I was going to die. And my husband was also racing it, and he was not having a good race. And I thought I was going to die. It was terrible. I was like, whoa, okay, I'm just going to keep going. I'm just going to keep going. And the first 10 miles took me something like 2.5 hours or
Whoa.
something extraordinary. I was sick. I was everything. But then I got really sick, and I was like, I feel amazing. And I ran the last 16.2 miles, the fastest I had ever run. And I'll never forget that experience, because there were so many highs, so many lows. The highs certainly outweighed the lows, but just the body's ability to be so resilient, to recover under such duress. And it really taught me, like, just stay the course. just keep moving forward. That not getting to that finish line, not hearing your voice was not an option for me. They were going to have to pull me off the course.
Mm.
And so after that, I started with a very regimented nutrition plan. That was a good thing. And I've just never forgot that, how you can go from such desperation to such joy in, in the matter of moments. And it was a wonderful day. There was a lot of drama that year about the water temperature. This was kind of like the first seed of like water temperature drama that I heard.
Yeah.
They had, I don't know if you remember this, but they had hot tubs
Yeah.
when you got
Yeah.
out of the water. And I was like, I'm not getting in a hot tub. I'll never get out. And it ended up just being the most perfect day, weather wise, everything, all the highs, all the lows, all of it. And I do remember that my coach said, you'll be so surprised how far out you hear Mike's voice. And I recall being, outside of maybe I was just in those neighborhoods starting to make my way to Sherman Ave, and I could
Right.
hear your voice, and it just pulled me home. I was like, I'm going to get to that. In every step, it got closer and it got louder, and I could hear it more and more and more. And so that I just have my cheeks hurt. I'm smiling so much. That day is never to be forgotten, nor the lessons of that day, which is just keep moving forward. And you never know when life is going to surprise you in either way, high or low, but keep moving forward no matter what.
That's a beautiful story, and that Coeur d'Alene's a beautiful event. I miss that tremendously, and I'm glad I got to do it in its last year. But it's a very, very special place. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. I always tell people go, "What's an Ironman day like?" Dude, it's like a life. The ups and downs. It's life. Stuff's going to hit you upside the head. Then you're going to feel good. Then you're going to feel bad. Then you're going to feel good. Then you're going to fall down and get back up. That's what a Ironman. It's just like life. So it's just
Yeah,
all in
it's
one day.
so hard. It's so hard. It's so hard, but that doesn't mean don't do it. Go for
Yeah,
it. Get out
exactly,
there and do
exactly.
it. Yes.
Jess, how can
Yes.
how can people find you, look you up, wonder about your coaching services or your retreats? Let us know.
Yeah, thank you. YOGITriathlete.com is our website, and we're Yogi Triathlete on Facebook. Instagram is where we're most active. Also, Jess Gumkowski on Instagram is my personal page. So I'm always posting there as well, pretty active there. And then awakeathlete.com is where you can learn about the book, order a book. You can download the first chapter for free. So I've got meditations up there. I've got yoga classes up there, 30-minute yoga classes for athletes. I call them mellow moves. They always include a little 5 or 10 minute meditation in there. So there's lots of good content on there that people can just dive into and have at it and share with their friends and yeah, dip their toes and see how it feels.
Well, Jess, this was fantastic. I found myself doing breathing exercises talking to you. I hope it didn't come through on the mic.
I love it.
So thank you very much for your time and helping us kick off the 2024 season of Find Your Finish Line. Everybody, thank you for the last 3 years of listening to the podcast. I certainly appreciate it. If you'd like to give us a review, do that. You can go to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, find us everywhere, or my website, MikeRiley.net. Remember, you are the cause of your own experience, so make it positive every day, and you'll find your finish line. Aloha, everyone.